monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Choice is an illusion created between those with power and those without.
I drink your milkshake. I drink it up.
Thank you, John Larson. I receive your kind words on behalf of all of our courageous members of the House of Representatives who want the best for the American people. And what we can do that is best for them in the next 24 hours is to pass affordable, accessible health care for all Americans. The best for all Americans is to have 32 million more people to have health insurance in our country. The best for...
Piece of stinking filth.
Shh, say it again, Shali. This is AJ of the InfoWars. Listen to the Shaliak. This is Alex Jones of InfoWars. Listen to Shaliak on the Cold Reality News and Report.
This is the coolest thing I have ever seen.
Well, hello there. Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Leaders on both sides of the aisle in Congress, in the media, in our intelligence services, in virtually every overfunded think tank in Washington, have suddenly aligned tonight on a single point of agreement. America must go to war in Syria immediately. Bashar al-Assad cannot continue to lead that country. He must be overthrown. Assad is an evil man, they tell us. His latest crime is a chlorine gas attack carried out over the weekend by his forces against a rebel-held suburb of Damascus. Assad's poison gas suffocated children. Pictures of the aftermath of that are all over the internet, and they are horrifying. Assad is a monster. That's the official story. Almost everyone in power claims to believe it. The push to war in Syria, by the way, has united politicians from both sides. Lindsey Graham and Howard Dean typically agree on very little. Not much at all. But today they are both calling for war in Syria. Graham is demanding massive attacks on the Syrian military. Dean is going even further than that. On Twitter, he called the president, quote, a wimp for merely sending thousands of troops and launching tons of bombs at Syria. That's not enough for Howard Dean, who, as you may remember, once ran for president as the peace candidate. Tonight, he wants total war in Syria. Television pundits, of course, strongly agree. This morning, the foreign policy team over on MSNBC explained that it's far more important for American troops to fight in Syria than it is to secure our own border here in America. Watch.
There's no question that now, all these years later, it is Donald Trump's challenge. He has to take action. He's spoken to Macron. What he ought to do is a coordinated action. There has to be a comprehensive response.
As Trump leaves to fight his imaginary border war, he's leaving the real war where we could make a difference, and said he's turning it over to Assad and to Iran and to ISIS. This is something that Barack Obama wouldn't even do if confronted with these set of facts.
Trump has to take action in Syria. Everyone nods sagely. That ought to make you nervous. Universal bipartisan agreement on anything is usually the first sign that something deeply unwise is about to happen, if only because there is nobody left to ask skeptical questions. And we should be skeptical of this, starting with the poison gas attack itself. All the geniuses tell us that Assad killed those children. But do they really know that? Of course they don't really know that. They're making it up. They have no real idea what happened. Actually, both sides in the Syrian civil war possess chemical weapons. How would it benefit Assad using chlorine gas last weekend? Well, it wouldn't. Assad's forces had been winning the war in Syria. The administration just announced its plans to pull American troops out of Syria, having vanquished ISIS. That's good news for Assad. And about the only thing he could do to reverse it and to hurt himself would be to use poison gas against children. Well, he did it anyway, they tell us. He's that evil. Please, keep in mind this is the same story they told us last April. Do you remember that? It was almost exactly a year ago. The new administration announced it was no longer seeking to depose Assad from power. Regime change was no longer our policy. So the usual war chorus in Washington started yelping, went berserk, and days later, Assad supposedly used sarin gas against civilians in Syria. There was video. We bombed a Syrian airbase in response to that. At the time, this show asked what seemed like the obvious question, are we really sure that Assad did that? It seems weirdly timed and counterproductive to him. Shut up, they explained. Of course we're sure. What an unpatriotic question. But of course they were lying. 2 months ago, the Secretary of Defense admitted that actually we still have no proof that Assad used sarin gas last year. The story, it turns out, was propaganda. It was designed to manipulate Americans, just like so much of what they say. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. But just for the sake of argument, let's assume they're not lying this time. Let's assume Assad did just use chlorine gas against kids. He's perfectly capable of that, by the way, not defending his moral character. Let's say he did do it. Would that be worth starting a new war over? Overthrowing Assad's regime in Syria would result in chaos. Many thousands would die. And in fact, we might likely see the genocide of one of the last remaining Christian communities in the Middle East, and we ought to care about that. Some of the dead, of course, would be American servicemen. A new war would cost us tens of billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions. Would it make America safer? Would it make the region more stable? Let's see. How exactly did regime change work in Iraq and Libya? Doesn't matter, say our moral leaders on CNN and everywhere else. Atrocities like this cannot be tolerated. Okay, but let's be real. We do tolerate atrocities like this all the time. For example, there's a devastating famine killing children in Yemen right now. The Saudis are causing that famine. Should we drop tomahawks on Riyadh in response? Not until it's on YouTube, apparently. When you conduct foreign policy by viral video, pictures are essential. But in real life, Syria is a highly complicated place. With Assad gone, who would run it exactly? Do we have another strongman in place to install? Or is it our hope that a stable democracy will magically appear in the wake of this protracted civil war? And who exactly are these moderate rebels you're always hearing about, the ones that we're supporting with your tax dollars? Well, a lot of them turn out to be Islamist crazies. For example, the city where the chemical attack just occurred is mostly controlled by the Army of Islam. It's a radical group that has called for establishing an Islamic state under Sharia law in Syria. That group's founder called for exterminating all Shia Muslims and Alawites from the country. But we're supposed to wage a new war on this group's behalf. Why is that exactly? Back in 2013, when the Syrian civil war was still in its early days, one onlooker weighed in on Twitter. Here's part of what he wrote, quote, "We should stay the hell out of Syria. The rebels are just as bad as the current regime. What will we get for our lives and billions of dollars? Zero." In another tweet, he said this, quote, "Let the Arab League take care of Syria. Why are these rich Arab countries not paying us for the tremendous cost of such an attack?" And in yet another tweet, he said this, "What will we get for bombing Syria besides more debt and a possible long-term conflict?" Of course, you know who wrote that. It was Donald Trump. And he was right. And that's one of the reasons he got elected president. And now the same people who brought you a dying American middle class, undefended American borders, and endless pointless wars in countries you could not find on a map are telling the president he's got to depose Assad for reasons that are both unclear and demonstrably dishonest. And by the way, it may happen. But before it does, Congress ought to consider a brand new constitutional amendment. Let's call it the Lindsey Graham Amendment. And here's what it would say. Congress shall topple no government until it finishes rebuilding the last government it toppled. And furthermore, talk show generals shall be required to personally visit the battlefield of every war they advocate for. End of amendment. That would have an immediate and positive effect. Let's hope it passes.
Right now, that's what the White House is now saying, but it was just 2 days ago that Nikki Haley, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, said new sanctions would be announced against Russia in response to that chemical attack in Syria. She expected that announcement yesterday. It did not happen. Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. He's a Republican member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, also the Homeland Security Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. let's get to some of the substantive issues that you're dealing with right now. Your committee chairman, Bob Corker, described the walkback by the White House as confusion. Larry Kudlow, the president's new chief economic advisor, says there was no confusion. He simply says Ambassador Haley just got ahead of herself. What was your reaction? Did the White House undercut Ambassador Haley?
Well, I think before you talk about sanctions, we ought to talk about, what evidence is there that that Russia was complicit in this attack. In fact, for that matter, I still look at the attack and say, Assad either must be the dumbest dictator on the planet or maybe he didn't do it. I have yet to see evidence that he did do it. The intelligence agencies claim they have that evidence. But think about it. Does it make any sense? He's been winning the war for the last couple of years. The only thing that would galvanize the world to attack Assad directly is a chemical attack. It killed relatively few people compared to what can be killed with traditional bombs, traditional machine guns, traditional tanks. And so you wonder, really, what logic would there be for Assad to be using chemical weapons? So before we get to the Russians, we have to first determine that Syria was implicated, and then really we ought to determine what the connection is between Russia and Syria on this attack.
As you know, not just the U.S., but France and the U.K., they participated in the bombing of these chemical sites in Syria. Are you saying, Senator, the president had bad intelligence?
I don't know. I haven't seen the intelligence. We have a briefing this afternoon where I may see some of this. But the difficulty is these things are not a slam dunk. This was back in 2013. President Obama looked at that chemical attack. And at that point in time, there were his generals saying, hey, it's not a slam dunk. Because you can detect that there were Syrian planes, you can detect that Syrians dropped bombs, but it's sometimes difficult to know whether they bombed an existing depot of weapons, and the rebels have been known to use chemical weapons, or whether the Syrians did it. If the Syrians did it gets back to the question, Assad must be the dumbest dictator on the planet to use chemical weapons when he knows from previous evidence it's the only thing that gets the world galvanized to attack him.
Or he may have thought he could get away with it. Who knows? Your committee chairman, Bob Corker, also is expected to put forth what's called an AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force, new legislation. First of all, do you know what's in it? Are you likely to support it? Where do you stand on that?
It is a good idea to debate whether we should be at war or not. Unfortunately, the use of authorization force, the resolution they're putting forward, actually expands the president's ability to commit war. And so if it were a limitation on the president's power, I'd be for it. This actual resolution will expand the president's authority. For the first time, it will list 6 or 7 groups that we're at war with. You remember after 9/11, we were at war with those who attacked us and who aided or abetted them. But now this is going to codify 6 or 7 groups, maybe 10 to 15 countries that we can be at war in. But really, it's limitless. If we detect any of the groups having activity in any country, the president can go to war there. He just has to submit a notice saying, hey, guys, we're now at war in a new country. And that, to me, is not a limitation. It's actually an expansion of war making, and I think a huge mistake.
In an editorial on CNN.com, you said the president should trust his gut when it comes to Syria.
This week on Cold Reality Radio. Under attack, FBI has become partisan battleground. More of the aftermath of the attack on Syria and the lack of evidence. Ivana says he does not need to run again. Massive unrest in France over Macron's decision to join the gaggle of corporations that wound up attacking Syria. Same in the UK. Theresa May standing up there as the bloodline representative
of the families that run planet Earth, saying that they have the right to do whatever they decide to do, much like what's happening in the U.S. Naked gunman kills 4, injures 4 in Waffle House. Romney forced into primary for Utah Senate nomination. Another bloodline family member. Past presidents and family friends bid farewell to Barbara Bush. Another bloodline family member related to Mitt Romney. Starbucks under investigation over hidden camera in bathroom. Three police officers busted having sex with the opioid thief in City Hall. Not arrested, not even fired. "79 graves uncovered at Sugarland construction site." Libyan oil pipeline attacked by terrorist group. And of course, that wonderful, wonderful man, Bill Gates, pledges $1 billion to fight malaria as experts fear a resurgence of that. That and more on today's edition of Cold Reality Radio here on the UCY.TV Broadcasting Network. Betsy DeVos, Department of Education, is saving itself work by dismissing hundreds of civil rights cases. Again, the Waffle House shooting leaves 4 dead, several injured, gunmen sought. Over 30 killed and 50 injured in Kabul suicide blast. OPCW finally arrives in the Syria chemical attack site and collects samples. And of course, the outcome, the new Cold War, Russia and the U.S. spar in Syria. Gunfire, explosions heard near Saudi royal palace. King Salman reportedly evacuated. Russian journalist find boy in white helmet's chemical attack video. Tells a much different story than, surprise, what Western media has reported. Broward County Sheriff Israel to face no confidence vote for suspected malfeasance. Also the epicenter of the opioid catastrophe that the United States corporation and the pharmaceutical corporations combined to create and therefore kill many. Of course, finding out this week that apparently Prince did not know that there was fentanyl in what he was taking, which led to his untimely death. World Bank recommends that countries eliminate minimum wage, dismantle wrongful dismissal rules, and contractual protections for workers. Wells Fargo's $3 billion tax windfall more than offsets Trump's paltry $1 billion fine. And it goes on. Those stories and more over on the front page of blacklistednews.com. Let's talk about how long Tucker Carlson's going to be on the air after he really, truly, to a great extent, tells the truth. But it's weird because even Russia today, and I'm going to play a clip of a few clips of crosstalk episode that happened right after. I guess I want to say it was the Monday right after the attacks, and what Rand Paul says were a false flag and really no evidence, and it really doesn't even matter anymore. Really doesn't even matter anymore. Nobody is going to face it. No one is going to take it on the chin for what lack of evidence that Mattis reported saying. But there's one thing that was so important about what one of many things was that whenever you have the people on the lefties and the righties combining to do something, especially when it involves going to war in another country, because let's face it, at this point now, they're not going to stop. Whatever happens, they are not going to stop. Pulling out of Syria, not going to happen. Eric Prince and his mercenary training, they're recruiting any number of different people out there, and this has to happen. Unless somebody gets a crisis of conscience, they are going to continue to create one crisis after the next until they just go in there and devastate the entire area, which is really the sick, demented murderers, just absolute garbage, human waste, the equivalent of human waste, animal waste. Well, that's what they think we are anyway. They think we're animals. So we'll just say human animal waste is what these people are the equivalent of. And they're not going to stop until they gain control over that area. Now, I still look at this thing as the grand chessboard. I'm not, thinking. I mean, look at that. There was some kind of agreement prior to the missile strikes that, two different stories. This amount of missiles hit. This amount were, blocked, deactivated, neutralized by anti-aircraft, whatever, anti-missile technology. But the bottom line here is that some kind of agreement was made between Russia and America. So it really does kind of look like all of this is being orchestrated on some level. I can't help but think, with the power and the absolute evil and devastation that's going on that most Americans don't know about. And it really is fascinating to me how what we hear in the United States corporation and the media about what's really going on in the world. And then all you have to do is I give, how that whole thing that Alex Jones says, like they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. They have to put out there in the ether that they're going to do this, they're going to do that. They have to do that, some kind of, so that they can say that we were warned, okay? But if you look at Americans, they will watch the news and they will say stupid, retarded fucking things like, well, Assad's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And then I say, according to Western media, which we know now is pretty much fake news. But it's fake news here. But when we hear that, Assad did this or somebody said that Assad did that we believe it right away because we don't want to be disrespectful or unpatriotic, much like what Carlson said. Just shut up and go along with the plan. Shut up and buy into that Assad is a bad guy, even though I don't want to say he allowed, but Syria was and seemed to be a place that many described as a country or a piece of land. I don't even call country anymore. I don't want to say country anymore, but a piece of land where all different types of people could coexist together. Christians, Jews, Alawites, all different types. But what's happening is that those who wish to dominate the land, Israel wants to dominate the land, the West, the banking families that control France, that control Germany, to a certain extent, because Germany's kind of wishy-washy. There'll be another terrorist attack there, as Merkel may get wishy-washy and be on the fence about whether Russia's a bad, because their economy depends on them. They're getting things, which is the way that the world should work. Any society should work. If you have something that we need, we can purchase it from you, and that way we can do the things that we need to do here, and we can build a different society. I don't know that that's happening for sure in Germany, but all I can tell you is that this hidden hand that has truly been at the heart of every event, every global event, plus or minus a percent or two, is pure evil. And it will kill whoever it has to kill to justify. It will justify any type of slaughter, like 9/11. It'll justify any type of incident to be able to expand. Like the beginning of the program. Like Kennedy said, we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy. And some fucking retarded jackass would say, "Oh, it's communism," where he was talking about. yeah. Another fucking idiot who believes the isms. You got to create your enemies, and you got to create these ideologies and ways of thinking, and to then be able to build an opposition to that. But people still believe that the communists, people still believe that the Cold War was a real thing, that Russia was really a threat all those years, when it was the same organizations, the same money interests, the same families controlling each country to loot everything out of it and then ultimately control it, make it their like personal little utopia in a sense, and then of course for the people, they get the scraps and the scribbles and the shit that falls off the table onto the floor. But we have a lot of people out there that are these professors, and we already talked about the doctors and the lawyers and how they are just useful idiots who make a lot of money and think that they're saving people and getting people healthy. They're not. All lawyers are working for the system. All lawyers benefit from the system. You're the enemy. They're working with the courts and the magistrates and the jurisdictions and all these other things. And Clint taught us this in great detail. So these doctors and these, we understand that. And then, of course, you've got these, what do they call them? Academics that teach all these things about our past and all these things about, they're all jackasses too, most of them. They haven't figured out yet that the whole entire system of what is taught to people is bullshit. Bullshit, lies, liberal arts, all this crap, all this fucking garbage that gets taught in these universities that were created from this bullshit lying system, bullshitting us about everything that has ever happened. And if you believe it and you want to think that you're a history buff or you think you know this or you think you know that, shame on you. It's like fool me once, shame on you. And then fool me twice, fool me 3 times, shame on me, shame on me, shame on me. And it's just a continual fool me, fool me, fool me. People that believe that Barack Obama came out of nowhere to become the president of the United States, you're out of your fucking mind. People that think that the Bush family, that they're just a political family, the Clintons, they're just a political family. They're all part of this system of minions that work for the hidden hand, for the bankers, for the banking families, for those that wish to do harm globally, massively across the board. There is no other. There is no other. These people are human waste that gets all of the spoils. And so we have Tucker Carlson pointing out that Dean and, Lindsey, Miss Graham, right, pointing out that they're both on the same page. We should do this. Be very, very careful. Be very, very, question things in detail when you see those two agreeing and the left and the right agreeing that this is the right thing to do. Because, again, that is the hidden hand of the system saying, this is what we're going to do. And if you want to continue to be whatever it is that you are, besides a pile of smelly human waste like Dean is, like Lindsey Graham is, these sellouts, these closet queens that the system has all kinds of dirt on. And believe me, there's dirt on Graham. There's dirt on that demonic bag of shit. So, where are we all going with this? A lot of people are saying that, I'll give you this. So, there's proof. Just say they had proof, like Carlson said. Just say they had proof. Is it worth doing this? Is it worth doing that? You'll hear in the crosstalk breakdown from Peter Lavelle and his roundtable that what sense does it make if you suspect that someone has chemical weapons and you blow those chemical weapons systems and structures that's going to create a cloud of chemical weapons. And it's going to hurt more people. Did that happen? No. And you'll find that these groups that are over there, these moderate rebels, are not that the only reason that these people are there is because they're being paid and rewarded. And just imagine the kind of mindset that you can grab someone and then turn them into, and they either know that they're being used or they don't know and they're getting paid to. I mean, that's probably how desperate these people are to do these things. To do these types of things, to put people in cages and use them as human shields. And the system that controls America, the system that controls Israel, the system that controls Saudi Arabia, who has been bombing the Yemeni people into the Stone Ages, killing children, we hear nothing about it. Are we going to cruise missile them? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's been going on. And how come, there's been talk about it in the District of Criminals, the Bloodline District of Criminals. There's been talk about Yemen, that we need to stop supporting Saudi Arabia, who's doing this to them. But never once does somebody say, maybe we should bomb Saudi Arabia. Maybe we should. They're murderers. They're killers. At this point, considering the breadth of the Yemeni crisis, Saudi Arabia, they are 10 times worse than any. They've done awful things. They're doing it right now, and they're looking the other way. They're looking the other way. And Assad, who didn't even gas or do these things, because a year ago the same thing happened. They figure, okay, we'll give it a year. We'll recruit more of this desperate human waste to go in there and try to overthrow Assad and try to overthrow what's going on over there. It's just ongoing. And it's not working. So then Trump says, "Oh, we're going to pull out of Syria," and then Assad's going to be like, "Yeah, let's chemical gas, children." It's ridiculous. And for someone, they love to tell you that. They love to tell you that nothing they do makes sense because they're crazy, they're murderers, and we need to kill them. They're Hitlers. So it's just ridiculous. It's so phenomenally fucking ridiculous that you can't help but think that there is absolutely no hope. And that this system surrounds us, this mindset of belief for what we aren't, but most people think that we are, that we're something, that we are the, what's that? Team America, that we are, everything we do is good, everything this, everything that. And I don't believe that I'm not carrying water for Russia. I'm not carrying water for any one of these corporations, because I truly feel that at the core, we are the whole system is working towards this world conflict, this World War III event. And then just like every other war and conflict, it's going to spin out of control. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. And then everything that they have planned in each one of these countries, whether Russia or China or America, they're going to implement these plans. They're going to implement these plans. And it's just going to be further dehumanization. They're going to steal what you have, and if they don't steal what you have, those that have less than you will steal what you have. And why they would want something like this, why they would want a world like this, says so much about the type of fecal matter that they are. Why they would want something like this. Why they would want to displace Libyans or just people, But we have to classify them. They're Libyans, or they're Syrians, or they're Iraqis, or they're Israelis, or they're Americans, or they're the Swiss or the Germans. Everybody's got to be categorized. Everything's got to be categorized in a manner that separates us and makes us different from one another. So we see the streets of America. 3 police officers suspended without pay after their department learned that they were having sex while on city property, serving as a reminder that if the average citizens were caught having sex in City Hall, they would have been arrested for lewd behavior while in public. But because the police have one standard for themselves and another for the general public, the officers were given only a few days off without pay. They need to stay in that realm so that when the desperate commoners set the cities on fire, that the police will be there to protect and serve for a while until they're ineffective, and then the big weapons come in to protect the corporations and the bloodline families' property, what they own, and you pay your taxes to them, these private citizens that don't live like we live, but they reap the benefits of owning land that they don't even pay taxes on. But you do. And I just sit here and I think about the level of disconnect. The level of disconnect. And I just look around and I see unhealthy people. I see people, and I mean, I didn't really truly kind of become aware of things. I really, really, truly believe that food has been used as a weapon. I think people that eat predominantly McDonald's and eat and drink a lot of sodas and sugars, and they drink a lot of diet sodas and things like that. Just bad food in general. That they have some kind of clouded brain, or brain fog, that does not allow them to truly see things for what they are. And I, at one point, just said, I think it was after I saw the Super Size Me documentary with the Morgan Spurlock, and he was for 30 days eating nothing but McDonald's food. Had two or three doctors, but he was examined by these three, blood work, urinalysis, all these different things prior to this endeavor. And 15, 16 days in, both doctors said, but his body chemistry changed so dramatically. The quality of his blood, the enzymes in his liver, kidneys, the whole deal. They said your liver is going to fail. Your liver is going to fail if you don't stop what you're doing. So when I saw that, I was like, I'm not eating that anymore. I'm not going to eat their food. I'm not going to go to Burger King's. I'm not going to do Taco Bell. I'm just not going to do these things anymore. Now, every now and then there'll be like a Chick-fil-A thing, but predominantly fried foods, totally bad for you. You want to change that. I believe truly that probably the most damage of McDonald's food is done by their fries, their McNuggets, their fried foods, their fish fillet, all these fried foods. Once they get into the body, they're molecularly changed to the point where your body doesn't know how to handle them. So then your liver gets clogged up and all these other different things start to happen. And then you throw the phosphoric acid and all the other chemicals that are in regular sodas. I mean, you can make a carbonated drink with cane sugar or something like that, and drink them from time to time. But I think in general, people in America are highly, highly toxic. And of course, the blood-brain barrier gets affected, and then you just get, the inability to be able to think with any clarity whatsoever. And then, of course, we've been indoctrinated with the show, with the movie. Every day, the movie. You go to school, and there you are. We spoke about this before. We spoke about, where are we? Can we really, truly trust NASA? Can we trust any of these organizations to tell us where we are? What are we doing here? It's been a massive cover-up, I truly believe. Just like the massive cover-up of what truly happened in the past, what truly happened throughout history. And just because we have a world where we can go out and we can hop in a car and drive to a store, drive to a restaurant and eat food and buy things, that doesn't mean that you're free. It really doesn't. Because your mind is enslaved. There's just no doubt. Everything that we've done militarily in the last 100 years has been an absolute lie, a hoax, a farce. And it has been done and triggered and funded by these ne'er-do-well human fecal matter piles of shit. that spawned the Clintons and the Bushes and the Romneys and the Pelosi's and all these different Pelopals. So you mention Pelosi's name and you instantly lose 20 IQ points and you start babbling words that are not words. But what are words? An enslaved language. That's what the pig Latin that we are taught. And of course, we found out from Clint that that they speak a different language than their slaves. You don't teach your slaves and people that you wish to enslave physically and mentally. You don't teach them the language. You don't. You don't. And so a lot of these things that we've heard over the years, if you have half a brain and you're paying attention about, the Illuminati, this, that, all of these different types of conspiracies that people just dismiss because they've been trained to do so and they have no idea why. They just do. Because everything's so wonderful. There's no way that any of these things could have taken place. There's no way that anybody would do such awful things. When in fact, they do them all the time. And the cowards and the thumbsuckers that you run into every day who can't just, for the life of them, they just can't go there. They just can't go there because they haven't graduated. They haven't been able to really, really, truly see the world for what it is. So they attack you, or they attack the person that's trying to make the sense, that's trying to impart on them, not because they're super intelligent, just because they kind of get it. They kind of see. They kind of see the world for what it is. Sure, they see some of the beauty in the world, but at the same time, they also can't unknow and unsee the big picture. But we will continue to get lambasted and labeled and spoken down to, and by these people that are just still laying in that crib, just laying in that little crib prison. Even the baby needs to have some entertainment, so they dangle the little carousel thing there with the ducky and and what do we get dangled as adults? Car commercials, beer commercials, sexually explicit, things in the car commercials, in the food, in all these different things to make you think something, to make you think things that are not. So the baby sits there, gaga goo goo, tapping the ducky and the little star and the little and the all the different little things that hang off of those little baby carousels, and they're cute and everything. But the ducky is the car. But back then, all you needed was a ducky. But now you need that car to really be what you want. What you want to be. You really got to be. You got to get that car. You got to go in debt and make the worst deal ever, the worst financial deal ever by buying a car. And they'll just give a car to anybody. You see people out there, you're just like, I can't believe the bank actually gave them money. Well, they didn't really give you money. You stop paying on it. They come and take it. They repossess that shit. So, just like the homes, just like the housing crisis that they manufacturer that Summers and was that Larry Summers and Obama's Treasury guy out of the New York Fed, Geithner, how they did their part in mangling the global economy and then blaming it on people that couldn't afford the homes that they got. They actually turned it around on the people and said, it's these people that, were working at 7-Eleven and thought that they could afford a $300,000 home. Meanwhile, Wells Fargo's laundering drug money, credentials, stealing dead veterans' death benefits. Just, dead people still getting Social Security. Just to loot the system, Cloward Piven, destroy it, give money and benefits to people that don't work, people that don't. All they do is work in the bedroom, and then how many kids you got? Oh, okay, yeah, we'll just take from the guy who works 50, 60 hours a week, or the And then, of course, years ago, which Larry Elder pointed out, that they would give money to single mothers as long as they didn't get married. If you got married, boom, you lose these benefits. So why? And then slowly but surely, you create there's rare situations where people will, I want to say rare, but more often than not, it turns out bad. But then again, some families, alcoholism, drugs, broken families from, cheating spouses, things like that. But when you look at the single mother raising, in inner cities, chances are your children are going to be, no matter how hard you try, unless you've got a real gem of a kid, those kids are going to be right into the prison industrial complex that they designed. That they designed just for these failing schools. Made movies about it. Was it Alfred Woodard, or I forget about what it was. It was who the heck was in that? Just two women, one white woman, one black woman, and then they said it like right there. It said, these kids are slated for prison so that they can fill the prisons that are unoccupied. Those are your options. Work, pay taxes, so that the U.S. corporation can fund jihadis in white helmets and all these other human piles of shit who are in the same level of desperation mostly, but there's people that are handling them that are that work for the chosen over there and all that. So everybody's being handled. Everybody's got their job to do. Everybody's got their job to do. Like your doctors and your lawyers your nurses, your pharmacists. Just one big conglomeration of death with your percentages of this procedure works for this, that procedure works for that. And we believe. I believe in America. I believe in America. I believe. Really? Thanks for all the love. It helps us continue doing what we do best. Sell out to the system and then justify in some really, really fucked up way when there's children that are being murdered and used as human shields by Western-backed proxy jihadis. But of course, most Americans have no idea what they're part of. They have no idea that they're property. They are property of this corporation. You work for the corporation. It's not a country. It's a corporation. And you work for it. Till the corporation doesn't need you anymore. And that's where we're going. Especially the ones who have figured it out. They really don't need you anymore. Because you're going to screw up the indoctrination process. Because sooner or later, when the hidden hand grabs another and takes another and pushes another and takes this and takes that and takes that, people are going to say, hey, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but these are some things that I heard from conspiracy theorists, and they're happening now. But I don't want to be a conspiracy person. Okay. See? There she is. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, nobody wants to be the conspiracy person. But all these things that the conspiracy persons were talking about 10, 15, 20 years ago, well, these things are happening now. I don't want to give any credit to the conspiracy persons. I don't want them to get, feel like, they've accomplished anything, I don't want them to feel like they taught me anything. 'Cause, I still have my head, pretty much shoved all the way up my anus. But just enough now, just out of there, out of the caverns of my bowels, to be able to actually see something. I started eating, more green beans than, McDonald's, or I started, maybe going to, Panera for some soup or something instead of, fries and, there's probably people out there that have never eaten a baked potato. They just know fries, and they had no idea that they were actually potatoes that were turned into fries. I don't know. It's very sad. It's very sad what we're seeing. It's very sad what we're seeing. And we get all the, the sports and the entertainment, Scandal, that show Scandal, just absolute, just all of it, just anti what is right. At least if you watch The Walking Dead, you can see all the people. You can see what the true nature of people really, really is. With Negan, and he thinks he was the savior, but he just stole from people. He was like the government, like, we're the saviors, we're going to save you, but when we stop by, you better have stuff for us. He thought that was okay. And then, spoiler alert, Rick winds up cutting his throat. The kid that the Indian kid who was the reason why little Coral's no longer around, got bit trying to save this nice young man, trying to get him some food. He goes over and saves Negan, sews up his throat, and now Negan is Rick's bitch. Going to be used as an example of what people should not do to other people. So if you know anything about that, I watch that show. I watch it. Sometimes it's ridiculous, but I point out the ridiculousness. But I guess the things about it are, if you look at something and say, why would he do that? Or why would that be something that they do? They always say, hey, it's the apocalypse, man. People aren't right anymore. Those that aren't walking flesh-eating zombies, they're just not rotting their heads no more. And then when you see these things, and people are like, oh, they got to get Negan, they got to stop Negan. But when this Jeffrey Dean Morgan guy goes out there on a lot of these talk shows, he says, hey, I didn't do anything to them until they killed all these people of mine. They used a bazooka and blew all my people up. And he said, I only clubbed the two of them in the head, and then stole from everybody else. Said, this is the way it's going to work from now on. We're going to steal from you. So there's all kinds of justifications for what people do. But it's interesting to see the true nature. I mean, are these Walking Dead? Are they the threat? Sure, if there's a herd. Sure, if there's, I mean, they're just hungry. Useless eaters, if you will. Target practice. But what's very interesting is that they justify everything that they need to justify when they need to justify it. So it's an interesting show that just kind of puts things into perspective as far as the characters, and I think there's a time frame for it. I can't imagine that they're going to go, or they're season 8 or something. I can't imagine that they're going to go very far with it. But it really does kind of show you that the true nature of people and what they'll do to one another. And then, of course, there's the group that tries to keep its humanity, or tries to keep, like poor Carl said, there's got to be something after this. There's got to be something after this. So I don't know if you watch it or not, but it's kind of a really, really good example of where we are in the world, because there are most of these people that these mindless consumers that don't give a thought about what they're involved in and what they're responsible for. They just don't know, and they are, again, the Walking Dead, the zombies, walking across the street staring into a phone, getting hit by a car because you can't put your fucking phone in your pocket and be done with it. I mean, there is a masterful plan that has been underway for a long time, and it's coming to a head now. And it involves World War and really, really bad times for a lot of people, except for those that have been preparing for it. So everybody's pretty much aware of, at certain levels, they know what's coming. They know that the cities are going to be just lit up at some point, and it's not going to be safe for anybody, really, because we're being pushed. We're being pushed to the limit. We're being pushed to the limit. All right, so let's see here what else we got. Let me refresh the screen here. So I'm not quite sure where Bill Gates is going to spend this $1 billion to fight malaria, but I can guarantee you that these people are going to die, because Bill Gates is one of those piles of fecal matter. All right, so what do we got here? It's not just the oceans. Microplastic pollution is all around us. Apple is likely to stop producing. That's probably the wrong. Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's weird. I never saw that on there. But anyway, iPhone 10 is dead as consumers turn their backs on pricey smartphones, says an analyst. Apple is likely to stop producing the 10 smartphones, according to Microbaud analyst Neil Campling. The oversupply of chips and high prices are the reasons, he says. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturer, or TSMC, the world's largest semiconductor foundry company, is facing a problem with an oversupply of chips, and the company's stock was down 6.3% on Friday. So, all you zombies, go get your iPhone 10s. They're probably only $900 now for the 128 gigabyte version. Entire county refuses to obey new gun control law, declares itself gun owner sanctuary. A county in Illinois has declared itself a sanctuary for gun owners in an attempt to stand up to the state's efforts to unconstitutionally restrict the Second Amendment. All right. Let's see if this article here, but this I've been hearing more about this microplastic pollution being all around us, and the system is moving real slow now. Ooh, taking forever just to pull that. Wow, yeah, that story overlapped with the CNN article. Anyway, I think that, this here, you can look at this and say, is this really happening? Or is it a way that people are going to buy more iPhone 10s now because they may not be able to get them? See here again. All right, let's take a look at this. Of course, the Bill Gates. This week, Microsoft founder. Yeah, right. Just another front man that's implemented into the corporation of cyber control over people. What is exactly what it was supposed to be from its founding, and Bill Gates was the one that was spearheaded to do it, just like Zuckerberg was spearheaded to be the owner and douchebag, fucking weird faced alien guy to be the Facebook, the what do they call that? Non-threatening. And then they're like, hey, wear a hoodie so you can look a little bit threatening. Because, wearing a hoodie means that you're hiding something, I guess, right? So as we get closer and closer, where the hell is this story, man? I can't. There's something wrong with this system big time, man. Hold on a second. Everything is just massively slow on this iMac. Takes like 5 seconds to. I wonder if it's being, when that happens, you wonder, like, why? Is there somebody trying to do something? Is there somebody trying to manipulate my system or the bandwidth of the internet? Because they do that now. Surprise. Thanks, Captain Obvious. All right, we'll see what we got here. See if I can turn it back on. I just kind of disconnected my wireless connection. Let's see what we get here. Wow, it's taken quite some time to reconnect to the wireless. Let's see what we got here. Oh, great. Maybe there's a video here. They'll explain murdering Bill. Oh, Thailand battles drug-resistant malaria strains. Wow, it's taking forever. Taking forever to load. Iran warns about making any deals with Trump. Okay, maybe. These infected mosquitoes are carrying the parasite, which is quickly spreading across Southeast Asia. Let's spray some more poison. But the border areas are most at risk from the latest drug-resistant form. Thailand is the key country in the region. Here, health workers are giving weekly blood checkups to malaria patients to let the disease stop from becoming drug resistant. Yeah, I don't buy any of that shit. And of course, more bullshit from if you want to know, like, if you want to see the bullshit firsthand, just go to like CBSNews.com, and you can just read a treasure trove of absolute bullshit and garbage. Bloomberg gives $4.5 million to help U.S. keep Paris Climate Accord. These fucking green zombies. EPA chief met with lobbyists who rented him a condo. People really cared about the fucking environment, they would be up in arms about what they're seeing in the sky every day with the geoengineering. But again, thumbsuckers who can't truly grasp what's happening. What else we got here? Minnie Mae died. Vern Troyer. World's oldest person dies in Japan at age 117. Will Trump's personal attorney flip on the president? NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick honored by Human Rights Organization. I really don't have any take on this. I mean, I'm not going to look at him as like, you're a bag of shit. But what I will say is kind of what that Jordan Peterson says. That when you start hearing about inequity, when you start hearing about all these things that surround and are parts of inequity, inequality, things like that, it's bad. It's bad time, bad news. So he has been honored by a human rights organization. So I couldn't care either way. There's either people that are going to be like, yeah, you go, Callan, or there's people that'll be like, what a fucking douchebag. I don't care either way. I know what's at the root of it, and that makes me unaffected by it. Say whatever you want to say. Do whatever you want to do. The ones that I have the problem with are the ones that fall for it. So, and of course, you always hear all these stories about the presidents, and when a first lady passes or a president dies or something, it's always like this huge deal. The royal family over there, when somebody gets married, we always hear about these people, and we always hear constantly, and they're like fucking celebrities, and the star fuckers on on the celebrity shows where they just sit there and star fuck every single one of these people. It just proves more of what these people are. Queen Elizabeth. You know what? To fucking hell with that bag of bones. Fucking hell with that bag of bones. Nobody should care about the monarchy over there. No one should care about it. All right, what do we got here? Betsy DeVos, Department of Education, is saving itself work by dismissing hundreds of civil rights cases. DeVos' latest target is the Department's Office of Civil Rights, a body tasked with investigating claims of civil rights abuses in schools. Under DeVos, the Department of Education has found a way to completely avoid its duty simply by inventing a rule that lets them opt out of it in order to be more efficient. Get it there. Let's see. After her disastrous 60 Minutes interview where she failed to justify or back up any of her policies or beliefs about education, DeVos may be eager to prove herself competent and effective again. And in a way, she's succeeding. Her goals even before becoming the Secretary of Education. And I always say, if government is in charge of the education, there's only one fucking reason why government would be in charge of healthcare or education: to fuck up your head and fuck up your health. That's it. The Secretary of Education was to undermine public schools, belittle teachers, and prop up student debt collectors. Now that, and of course, right, the banks that lent the money, she's in bed with them. Just like Obama's Secretary of Education was in bed with these banks. It's just that they've got their spin. Republicans just go out there and they're just like, yeah, this is what we're going to do. Which is pretty bad. Pretty bad. Now, Democrats or Secretary of Educations under Democratic or Democrat presidents, liberal presidents, they make it sound like they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do, and then they loot the whole fucking thing. They get all this money. Very little of it goes to what they said they were going to do, and if they fail at what they were doing, they blame it on the right. Just like the right will blame it on the left when. But again, the Republicans. They're just boom. They just go out there and tell you. The right doesn't want you to have an abortion because they need that body to fight wars down the line. So there's just real insanity going on across the board. But yeah, so any one of these complaints, anything about civil rights abuses that have been pending will no longer even be addressed. So. And so I'm going to kind of end the program today with the crosstalk. I'll be back on right before the end.
Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. The U.S.-led attack on Syria is a gross violation of international law. Furthermore, Western publics still have not been presented with evidence the Syrian government used any chemical weapons. A new phase of the Syrian proxy war has needlessly been opened up. Another war of choice. Cross-talking the West's attack on Syria, I'm joined by my usual suspects, Mark Sleboda. He's an international affairs and security analyst. And, of course, we have Dmitry Babich. He is a political analyst with Sputnik International. All right, gentlemen, cross-talk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Let's do a post-mortem here, Mark and Dima. It's only been a day or so since the U.S., along with Britain and France, attacked Syria.
The usual suspects.
The usual suspects, illegally under international law. There was no mandate from the United Nations Security Council to do this. But, you know, it's described in the mainstream as a military attack. I think it was a political attack. I think it was theater. This is what they really wanted here. Break it out for us.
Yeah, we've seen this show before.
Yeah.
I mean, we in varying degrees in different conflicts. We saw this show a year ago when Donald Trump made another cosmetic attack, again, under the pretext of chemical weapon use. And later, more than 9 months after that incident, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mad Dog Mattis, admitted, actually, we have no real evidence that Assad ever used
And
sarin
2 months
gas
ago, we
on
had with the
Al-Qaeda.
Russian Ministry of Defense come out and tell us that they were expecting
another
provocation.
Another pretext, a staged chemical weapon attack. And the one thing that the Western media will never tell you is who was in control of Duma. This is the Saudi-backed, literally head-chopping Wahhabi jihadists of Jaish al-Islam. Literally, they call themselves the Army of Islam. This was who was in control of Duma, right? And there were there's no Western journalists on the ground with them, of course. There's a couple of local gongos paid by the U.S. government, the white helmets.
Helmets
Syrian
are there.
American Medical
There's an
Society,
oracle of information
which is like
and knowledge.
The Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Go ahead. Go ahead, jump in.
There is an interesting detail that I would like to add. During all of the Syrian war, several Western journalists were kidnapped, and they were never kidnapped by Assad forces. They were always kidnapped by the so-called opposition fighters, moderates and the moderates. Matthew Shriver, a photographer, an American photographer, basically was tortured when he was held hostage. De Chirico, an Italian journalist, was taken hostage by the group that the West supported, and he had to go through enormous humiliations before they let him go. So the same story with Duma. Why are there no Western journalists there? Because these are jihadists.
It's not safe.
It's not just safe. It's safe that they're going to do something bad to you, Why are there Western journalists in Beirut, in Damascus, in Beirut, under this terrible Hezbollah, which is so dangerous, killing people, a terrorist organization which happens to oppose Israel, So, hypocrisy is absolute here. But coming back to your question, I think it was a media attack, and it was absolutely senseless, but very risky. Why was it senseless? There was no ground troops backup for this action. So it was just senseless, Well,
it gets down to something must be done, Mantra.
Something must be done.
What is the outcome, Mark? Who won? Who gained out of this?
Okay, so there's several reasons this attack was carried through. Right. The first one is that the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspectors were supposed to arrive in Duma to investigate the site and check whether chemical weapons were used, and if they were used, who used them, right? Because it's very possible that these rebels, quote, jihadis who have a history of using chemical weapons before, staged this thing themselves. The attack seemingly before any investigation by international inspectors was to take place, seemingly was designed to curtail that. Supposedly, they're still going to go ahead with that now, so if that was the goal, they haven't done it. Second of all, one of it is national prestige, drawing red lines, right? Nikki Haley said when our president, meaning not Obama, draws a red line. He enforces a red line. However, we've got a tweet a couple years ago. The only reason President Obama wants to attack Syria is to save face over his very dumb red line statement. Do not attack Syria, fix USA.
Well,
that was Donald Trump.
Yeah, but the interesting thing here, Tima, for me, it almost has nothing to do with Syria. It has everything to do with Donald Trump looking for people to adore him. It's remarkable but sad. This is the only issue he seems to be able to get support across the political spectrum, going on the international stage like a hammer looking for nails here, okay? He was praised across the board for this. Also, there always is the element of diversion, okay? There's a lot of things going on with the investigation of his campaign, of himself, of his family. This is a distraction. We can say Theresa May has done exactly the same thing in the UK. And Macron, I guess he just is a little Napoleon, okay, wanting to lead Europe or something like that.
Macron is facing one of the biggest strikes in French history. So he probably had the only real reason to deflect attention, because I don't believe in Trump's collusion with Russia, and I don't believe that Theresa May, is really absolutely clean on Skripal affair, which is simply falling apart, right? Yeah. But anyway, coming back to the uselessness of this action, the Western coalition has no replacement for Assad. In 2013, if Obama...
but what does this mean? Does this just mean that they can't accept defeat in Syria?
Absolutely.
Is this what this is all about?
Not only.
Because I agree with you. I have said repeatedly for years on this program, what do you want? A black flag flying over Damascus? No. That's not what we want. Nobody tells me what they want.
Well, in 2013, if Obama had bombed the Syrian troops then, and there was a very big chance of that happening, then the Islamic State, which was declared a few weeks afterward, but which had all the infrastructure, all the fighters, all the arms deployed, the Islamic State would have replaced Assad. They would have taken all the chemical weapons, which were not yet destroyed, which were left intact, and then our today's problems would seem minuscule, to us, compared to what we would have seen after the Islamic State taken Damascus.
Okay, but there still is no American/Western Syria policy, even after this.
Yeah, there is a policy, and I disagree. This was not because the West can't accept that they haven't succeeded in regime changing Syria. The partition and military occupation of eastern Syria and by northern Syria by Turkey is about that. There's another reason that this occurred. This maintains the policy and the acceptance by the world that the U.S. has the ability to scream weapons of mass destruction, right? Whether it's Iraq, we've had similar occurrences in Libya. There they cried genocide.
And the use of these weapons in the UK.
Right, as a pretext, right? The UK is another example. They believe they have the ability to scream weapons of mass destruction and then unilaterally, outside the bounds of international law, attack everyone they want with this existential situation created by these supposed weapons of mass destruction. What this does,
though, is that it encourages groups in Syria and around the world, presumably, you can use these weapons and you can look for an American reaction. It's wag the dog here. If there's numerous cases where these rebel groups, jihadi groups, have used chemical weapons.
Mohammed Aloush, the head of Jaish al-Islam, the jihadi group that was in charge of Duma when this supposed attack occurred, he called the attack a farce. He's very unhappy with the scale of the attack that he dialed into Washington. He's extremely upset. And luckily, though, Nikki Haley said in her recent speech, the U.S. is locked and loaded if Assad uses poison gas again. So sending a signal to Mohammed Aloush, when the Syrian army comes to liberate Idlib from the jihadis or Daraa or Homs, all you got to do is send out the signal
flares,
have the white helmets, dial in another attack. And it will happen again. It's only a question of when, how soon. Yes. And we'll be right back where we are today then. Well, or worse, back in a World War III situation.
The worst thing about this situation is that it is so easy to provoke another strike. I mean, you just need a few days now after the alleged chemical attack. In 2013, it took them a few weeks to prepare, right? But the attack was very dangerous because the Russians could have responded from the Caspian Sea by Kalibro missiles, deployed on our submarines and vessels. There were several Russian frigates nearby which could respond by their anti-aircraft, missiles. There was S-400s inside Syria. So,
but they were not used.
Yes, they were not used. The Russian Defense Ministry specifically said that they were not used. All the missiles that were struck down, there is a big debate how many of them. You know, the Syrian side, it says 73 out of 103, maybe less. But they were all struck down by old Soviet anti-aircraft system that the Syrian government had at its disposal.
What are the numbers you hearing, Mark? Because you have sources.
Okay, so there's two different versions of this attack coming out. From Washington, we hear that they fired 105 cruise missiles of various sorts, right? Some of them, their most advanced stealth ones and so on that they say they've used, and that all of them hit their targets. This is what we've heard. All right?
All of them hit
the French also said it.
We have a new Baghdad Bob. Her name is Dana White. She's the Pentagon spokeswoman. I'm just... Tell me, guys, what has a better ring to it? Is it DC Dana or Washington White? I'm undecided. She said that all the U.S. missiles, none were intercepted and all hit their targets. Meanwhile, the Russian side is saying that the U.S. fired 103 missiles and that 71 of those were intercepted.
Hold that thought. We're going to go to a hard break here. After that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Syria. Stay with RT. Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. To remind you, we're discussing Syria. Okay, let's finish up on that numbers game here, because we like you were saying, there's some radically different narratives. But then again, it's Syria, and that's what you get in the media, very different narratives.
The U.S. says that only 3 sites were targeted. They supposedly fired 105 missiles, which is just over double what they fired last year, at many less targets. Russia says they fired it at 8 targets, and that several of those, all of the missiles were knocked down. The U.S. claims that these were chemical weapon research facilities. Now,
why would you target these kind of facilities? Wouldn't they have chemical weapons?
Well, that's the argument.
After giving the Nobel Peace Prize to OPCW for allegedly finding them all and
Agency France Press was on the ground interviewing people at one of these Barzeh research facility. Most of these targets were in Greater Damascus, so within an urban area. There was no release of any kind of chemical weapons, no precursors, even if they were binary agents. Nothing dangerous was let out. Now, this office there, right, the OPCW, the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, has inspected this site twice. The last inspection was just 6 months ago. It was in November, right, just over half a year ago. They used to have an office in this building, the UN's Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and they used the labs, and they cooperated fully with them, right? The AFP journalist asked one of the employees of this lab, all right, if they were making chemical weapons, and he said, if there were chemical weapons, we would not be able to stand here, and you wouldn't be able to ask me those questions, right? It's ridiculous.
No, it isn't ridiculous, because Western media never asks honest questions. Go ahead,
Just a nice nuance to all of this. On the same day, the French Defense Ministry issued a statement that all our missiles also hit their targets, and we can pride ourselves on doing that. Probably they haven't read that AFP report.
Is this a marketing strategy for these arms makers?
Like they're patriots. I don't think the U.S. is doing a very good job of showcasing their weapons here. Now, hold on.
Sure.
The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights.
Make it short.
Yeah, this Rami Abdul Rahman, this FSA propagandist in Coventry, UK, right, this one guy, who has been quoted innumerable times by the Western press to inflate casualty numbers and everything like this. He disagrees with the U.S. assessment. Mm-hmm. He says that over 65 of the U.S. missiles were shot down. Not only that, but he did not agree that chemical weapons were used in Duma at all. He said that the people that were killed in the bombing, right? The bombing of the jihadi headquarters there. So if you can't even get Rami Abdul-Rahman to play around with your hoax, basically, you're doing a bad job.
With the exception of this instance here, I always think the opposite when I read what he writes. Okay, Dima, let's talk about something really important here, again, that gets no coverage in the mainstream. Russia hasn't reacted.
In fact,
it
yes,
says it will, militarily. Why not?
Well, I think the reason why the Russian anti-missiles did not strike down these missiles, and that was, confirmed by our Ministry of Defense, is because we didn't want to make it a rehearsal for an attack against Russia. Remember, Russia is the weaker side in this future conflict here. Russia's defense spending is 27% of what NATO's European allies spend on their defense. So if we show all of our trumps now, if we kind of, demonstrate all of Russia's defense capability, that would simply encourage.
I like
whenever you have a stronger attacking side, a stronger aggressor, and the weaker side defending itself, the weaker side wants to look stronger than it is.
Like that, you have to be smarter. Okay, you always have to be smarter.
You have to be smarter, and you have to be you can't show all of your trumps immediately.
Or there's an alternative here. They made a deal, Mark.
Yeah.
They made a deal. They didn't.
Very dangerous deal. If when you have a strike like that, the military people are very nervous. When they see cruise missiles, when they see the planes, they might not get the message from their commanders that don't shoot at them. During an attack like that, always you have radio electronic fight, as we call it. You may not get all the messages from your commander. So it was a very dangerous situation.
But at the same time, it seems to me they wanted to make sure they avoided any kind of direct conflict here.
Yeah, I disagree with that assessment as a military veteran whatsoever. Both Russia and the U.S. Have used both Syria and other conflicts as testing ground for their weapons, and Russia has tested numerous of its weapons. Plus, if you have a deterrent like supposedly the most advanced air defense system in the world, you want to make sure it's used to demonstrate its capability, right? And this would have been a perfect opportunity, firing just an unmanned cruise missiles to prove that. They did not. Also, it would have been a great marketing tool to sell the weapon, right? Russia's eager to sell the S-400. They did not. Now, so I agree. A deal was struck here. Despite the protestations from both sides, there were no fatalities in these bombings. None. Not one. There were 3 injuries, no fatalities. All of these facilities were evacuated days before the incident. A deal was obviously struck.
This goes back to the first thing I said. This is a political strike. Right. This is political theater.
So there was an agreement between Russia not to fire at the cruise missiles, right? And still the Syrian defense supposedly managed to knock down these antiquated Panzer S-1s that Russia has given Syria and so on, the short range. Right. So I have a problem with this. There's a short-term advantage. It prevents, at least temporarily, a larger strike, although the next time the jihadis dial one in, we'll be right back in the same situation again. Right? So it prevents a short-term strike, and it prevents an immediate World War III situation. There's a lot of problems with this, though, that I criticize the Kremlin for. One, it sends a signal to all of Russia's allies that if Russia is not willing to defend you from a direct U.S. attack, even if Russia has troops and base based illegally in your country. Second of all, it maintains this ability of the U.S. to attack unilaterally without any response.
But I don't know if you can square the circle here. I mean, 3 facilities empty were destroyed. Nobody died. Okay,
it's more than the number of people that died. There are precedents that are set. There are long-term strategic interests and precedents that are set. This maintains the international legal violation that the U.S. can attack countries like this by claiming weapons of mass destruction without any military response from Russia.
This is where I wanted to go, David. This is where I wanted to go because I think, to me, the biggest fatality in all of this is watching the U.S. Britain and France the way they dance on the global stage with impunity. I mean, we had May said. I mean, this is Prime Minister May. May said that it was a move to. It was a quote clear message to anyone else who thinks they can use chemical weapons with impunity. Well, who is behaving with impunity right now? Well, this is destroying international law, the United Nations. I mean, you even had member countries say, why isn't there even any votes on these resolutions anymore? Because we know that's not going to go anywhere.
In the UK, there was a big debate during the last week whether the Parliament should or shouldn't approve it.
And this time, the Prime Minister May made sure it didn't.
Yes,
because last time approved it and stopped the attack.
And the majority of voices, was in favor of having the Parliament decide upon it. In France, it's one day after the strike that President Macron informed, the Parliament on the reasons why he took the decision to strike. Nice way to treat things. But in general, if you look at the situation in Britain, at least in 2013, the Parliament voted against it. In the United States, at least Obama, in the last moment, opted for
because they made a deal with the Russians, over chemical weapons.
Yes. With France, there was never any problem about striking. So when I hear there's a lot of voices in Russia which say, oh, it's the United States forcing Europe to behave like that. Poor France, it is occupied. Poor Germany is occupied. No,
they took the lead.
They are willing participants in all of that. They share the same ideology. And coming back to that very important question about Russia's reaction, basically, Russia in this situation opted for a deal. Why? Because I'm not sure it was a very widely publicized deal, because there were lots of interviews with Russian military specialists days before the strike, and they were all afraid that the strike would be real. The real strike would be going after Assad, trying to destroy him physically, striking at the government buildings in in Damascus. If the Western side had done this, then the Russian
but in a way, both sides blinked. In a way, both sides blinked.
Both sides blinked. I agree with that assessment. And the result of that is that everything has been temporarily swept away, but will resurface the next time this happens. And
we have to remind everyone this happened.
It's a sort of a tie.
But the interesting thing is it's because the end of ISIL is within reach here, and every time we get to that point with the Syrian army, victory is within its grasp. Then we get one of these, what I think is a false flag, these chemical attacks here. Now, and we'll see it again with Idlib and others.
Now, it has to be said again. This was against both international and domestic law. The international law says the only time that you can use force is when you have a resolution by the Security Council authorizing force to rectify a violation of international peace and security agreed to by all 5 of the permanent members, or in a very limited sense of real existential self-defense, right? And neither one is clear. It's also against U.S. domestic law, right? Because the Congress, for the upteenth time, has willingly abdicated their war powers, where they have to declare war, and this continues, and this is Congress's fault.
And they've been given the opportunity to debate that, and they will not do it. It's not like 30 seconds here. It's not like Trump or Obama was taking all the powers. It's Congress willingly giving it away, and the responsibilities. 20 seconds, Steve, before we finish.
One important detail. When there were rumors about Trump's collusion with Russia, this mythical collusion back in 2016. When he won the election, all Europe was very concerned. They said that Trump was a threat to European security. I'm quoting the voices at the Malta summit. Now that Trump really did something really dangerous, when he did it in a rude way, calling President Assad an animal, saying that Russia should prepare for nice, smart missiles, that's not a threat. He is acting presidential. He has the support of the allies. That tells you a lot about Europe.
That says a lot about Europe and the West in general. Many thanks to my guests here in Moscow. This is the end of our broadcast segment. Stay with us for the extended version on our YouTube channel. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.
All right, so that was Crosstalk. can be seen on YouTube. Just type in Crosstalk RT. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they do a new program talking about what's going on with, all things are considered. Some of the shows are just really, really interesting, and it's just good to see another opinion, whether you it's a good or a bad opinion, whatever. At least it's there. All right, what else we got here? So, also stay tuned today for all the additional programming on UCY. We've got the usual lineup. Let's see. I know that Hal's going to be on today. And we've got Rock the Boat coming up. Yeah, my system is absolutely pathetically slow. Let's see here. Here we got Rock the Boat with Ron Stevens coming up. And what do we got? I know we're still, let's see, we got Rock the Boat with Ron, Corbett Report from 2 to 3 Eastern. From 3 to 5, we've got Behind the Woodshed with Hal Anthony. From 5 to 7, we've got Red Pill Sunday School with Clint Richardson. So we're still getting the Clint, even though he's not live on here anymore. His Red Pill Sunday School is still moving forward, plus all of the archives from the Corporation Nation are on there as well. So you can continue to listen to and learn from Clint and what he uncovered in his journey, and what all the hard work hard work and sacrifice, much like Jules and all of her hard work and all of her sacrifice. I applaud everyone, especially Jules and Clint, for all the sacrifices that they've made for this programming, for this the good programming, okay, not the programming that happens to us without us even knowing it. But again, from 7 to 8, Character Matters with Dr. George Simon. From 8 to 9, Jay's Analysis with Jay Dyer. Jay Dyer is another guy who really kind of breaks things down. Very, very interesting, intelligent, awesome stuff. Voice of Rebellion Radio from 9 to 11 tonight. And then 11 to 12 is Live Free FM with Nathan Frazier. So stay tuned, get focused, learn about the world that you live in. Try reality. I'm sure you all have. And I guess it's just something that, even if the outcome we know is going to be not very good, at least we'll be available to the right information, and maybe we can guide the future with our knowledge and our Will.
There is only one holistic system of systems.
I will MK Ultra ya, put the MK scope on ya. If the MK hits you, it's guaranteed to open ya. The 57mm Mark 110, 220 rounds a minute, try to stop them. Don't put that on your wish list, that's retarded babble. Protesters make the hit list soon as they start to rabble. They are nothing but fishes in the barrel. It doesn't have to be Christmas for a carol. Some decorate with ornamental decorum, some perform shock and awe on Hanukkah and Purim. That's where my job come in. I am a blessing to the mercenary for the corporation selling weapons to them. Any potential competitor step into them. I'm authorized to knock them out and stick a GPS into them. They want to sell uranium to Iran that's enriched. That's a bitch. Now we got a t-shirt.